Hey, everybody. Welcome to the podcast, The Happy Hangout with Christy. Today, I have someone to introduce you to. First, I want to ask you, have you ever been close to death? Like really scared and fearful because you thought you might die? Well, my guest today is going to tell you about his personal story of survival. So welcome, Greg. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me, Christy. I appreciate it.
Well, tell us a little bit about yourself and then where you're from and what you do. And then you can go into kind of painting a picture of how your story started. Now, I found you on a podcast. I heard your story and I was like, oh my gosh, I want my audience to hear your story. The way you tell it is amazing. And so just start us off telling us about your life and then the story.
Well, thank you. Well, let's see. I was born and raised in Syracuse, New York. So upstate New York. Went to Bible college. My life really changed I grew a lot in my faith as a teenager, and I decided I wanted to go to Bible college. So I went to Bible college in upstate New York, also Lima, which is just south of Rochester. Unfortunately, a city that is going through a lot of a hard time right now. Everyone can pray for Rochester, please. I get so saddened when I see what's going on the news in Rochester. So everyone can pray for them. But I went to Bible college there, studied youth ministry because I wanted to be a youth pastor and help to change teenagers' lives the way that my youth pastors and God changed my life as a teenager. So that's what I wanted to do. So I went to college for that. And then when I graduated, my pastor asked me to go to Korea for a couple months during the summer, right after I graduated, to go to Korea to help out for a few months with a church plant. So I said, okay, I'll go out there. See, my philosophy on missions is Jesus already said, go into the world and make disciples, baptizing them and teaching them to obey everything. So if Jesus said, go do it, then, and I learned this from my cousin Heather many years ago when I was invited to go on a missions trip. And I said, I'm thinking about whether I'm going to go. And she said, why are you thinking about it? Jesus already said go. And she said, I'm thinking about she said, I'm not praying about whether I should go. I'm praying about whether I shouldn't go. And I'm like, that's a great philosophy. And that has been my philosophy ever since. So when my pastor said, will you go to Korea? I said, my answer is yes, unless God says no, then I won't go. But other than that, I will automatically. And I did. And it was a glorious 2 months. I fell in love with Korean people. I fell in love with the Korean culture, the Korean history, Korean food, made a lot of friends. And after the end of the 2 months, I felt like my work there was unfinished. When I had to go back to New York, I felt like I had more there that I still needed to do. So after a number of months of waiting and consulting with leadership, maybe it was about a year, maybe a little over a year, finally I went back to Korea, and I was there for about a year and a half before the doors closed for me to stay there. But at the same time, a door opened for me here in Guam, and that was 9 years ago. And I've been in Guam now 9 years. I've been at this church. It's a Korean church. That's how I ended up in a Korean church, because of my history in Korea, working with Korean people and with churches in Korea. So then it was kind of a natural fit for me to be invited here to Guam. And so I've been the youth minister / English ministry minister at this church, Castle Zion Church. If anyone looks it up, it's online, Castle Zion Church in Guam.
And I will put those in the show notes so people can find out about your ministry.
Okay.
And yeah.
Okay. And I am ordained through this group called Missio Global Ministries. So Missio Global, we'll give you the link to put in the description too. So
Perfect.
That's the group that ordained and sent me. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, I just already love your story, your passion to work for the Lord, and then to work with students. So the story you're going to tell us actually is about taking students, right, on a little hiking trip.
Yeah. Boy, oh boy, there's the how much time do you want me to?
Well, I love to hear, I love to hear when you shared the story on the podcast, I was just so
Yeah.
tuned in. So I say, paint us a good picture of what it was like. I want to feel like I was
Okay.
there with you.
Okay. Um, without sucking up all the oxygen in the world, I'll try. I'll try to, you know, by speaking too much. Boy, let's see. Well, it was 2015, spring break, and I want to do, during the summer times or during some kind of break time. Generally, we like to do camps or whatever we can with the teenagers to keep them motivated and interested in church and God. So it was spring break, which is one of the shorter breaks, but still, I figured, let's see what we can do with the youth group. And unfortunately, because some go to public school, some go to private school, only a couple were able to, and they have breaks at different weeks, but we were only able to get 2 boys and me to go hiking. But that was okay. I figured, well, if that's all we get, then that's good enough. We'll go with the 3 of us. And it was a beautiful area that I love called Pagat Cave, Pagat, Pagat Cave. Absolutely breathtaking. And it was my first time ever. I'm sorry, it was their first time ever. I was the one who knew the hike pretty well, but the boys, it was their first time. In fact, I love it so much. I actually went back literally days ago. I went back 4 days ago on Saturday with some friends.
It's good to know that you went back there.
I've been back there many times, but I decided, yeah, let's go to Pagat Cave with the boys. So, it's very interesting in light of my story. The night before we went to Pagat Cave, the boys spent the night at my house, and we were up late talking and whatever, watching TV or whatever we were doing. And one of the boys felt like he didn't want to watch TV anymore or whatever. So he went in the other room and he played some music on his Bluetooth speaker, and he played the song Oceans by Hillsong.
Oh.
Take me deeper than my feet will ever wander. And kind of like a premonition there, I think. But he played that. And then afterwards, after that song, I wanted to listen to something. So I played, and this is by chance, I just felt like listening to this group called Evanescence, and the song is called Going Under. I'm going under, drowning in you. And it's freaky when you think about the song choices from the previous night. But the next day we went to Pagat Cave. I led them down. I couldn't wait until they got off their phone. They were teenage boys, 2 teenagers on their cell phones, texting their friends or whatever. But I was so glad when the cell phone signal dropped, because then we were really together. They weren't, pretending that they were somewhere else.
Now, were they high schoolers, or how old were they?
High schoolers.
Okay.
They were, I think 15 or 16. They were 15 or 16 at the time. And so they were texting their friends. The cell phone reception dropped out. And as we entered into the jungle, we had fine reception at the parking lot where we parked our car, but then we were going down the hill toward where the cave is. Down at the bottom of the jungle, there's a beautiful cave filled with fresh water. But if you climb up the backside and around the cave, there's a trail that leads you to a beautiful ocean vista, where you can, on a safe day, you can jump off the cliff about 20 to 30 feet high. I'm not exactly sure, 20 to 30 feet high.
Have you done that?
I did that about a year or 2 prior.
Oh.
I jumped off once or twice before that day.
I can't imagine.
I have a video on my Facebook of me doing that. I could actually show you, because I had a friend record it.
Oh,
so
that's
I could
cool.
actually put the link down in the description too for that.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
We have to take notes of all these links that we're
Yeah, let me write this down.
So it was Castle Zion Church. Castle Zion Church is my church.
And I do have that link.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then it's Missio Global Ministries.
Yes, got that too.
and the video of the jumping off Pocket Cave
Okay.
on my YouTube. That's on my YouTube. Okay. So
You're sitting there. So y'all get to that part where people do the jumping.
Yep, we got there. We went there. By the way, on the way down to the cave, we passed a lady who was leading a group of Japanese tourists, and we were greeting each other, and we said, we're gonna jump in if we feel that it's safe enough. We had no idea. And she said, oh no, don't. It's very dangerous, very dangerous. Please don't do it. Please don't do it. And see, I'm the kind of person who will make those decisions for myself without being told what to do. So I graciously said, okay, thank you. But then I told the boys, you know, if it's safe, we can do it. But we got to the ocean overlook, and it's all limestone, very sharp, rigid, jagged, volcanic limestone that will cut you into pieces. And the waves were just crashing over those rocks with an incredible force that I've never seen here on this island. And I thought, yeah, this is way too dangerous. I mean, clearly, there was no question about it. It wasn't like little waves like last week where you're kind of wondering if it's okay. This was clearly dangerous. Nobody in their right mind would have entered the water on that day. So I said, let's just stay down here for a few minutes, enjoy the beauty, and then we'll go back into the jungle where there's the cave, and we'll just, you know, and the cave is beautiful in its own right. But I said, let's just stay here for a while. And after a minute or two, I decided, you know, the waves were coming in and thrashing against the rocks with such force that the water sprayed up into the air, high up into the air, 20 or 30 feet, maybe 40, and then just coming down and splashing everything. But we were standing quite far back. And I said to the boys, you know, I really feel like being splashed. That's all it was. I just wanted to be splashed. So I went down to closer to the cliff side, not too close, but close enough. And I found a place where I could sit. Excuse me. I found a place where I could sit and put my feet. There was how do I explain it? There was a depression in the rock that was smooth enough and round enough and just big enough for me to sit down in, facing the water. And then there were a couple smaller depressions in the rock where I could put my feet, my left and right feet. And it was like a seat with, kind of like in the front of a car, when you're sitting in the front of a car in the passenger seat, if you extend your legs long enough, your feet actually are angled upwards, and you can push against the front of the car, push yourself back. And that's what it was like. I had my feet in a place where I could push back. It was just a comfortable spot. I didn't think anything of the security that it provided. I just thought, well, it's a comfortable spot, and I'm going to sit here and be splashed and then be gone. But I invited the boys to come down with me. And one of them was filming because he wanted to get on camera the moment of the splash. So he didn't want to come up. His name was Sam. He's the pastor's son of the church here where I'm at, Pastor O. So Sam is the son. He was recording. He didn't want to come down with his phone. But Kyle, the other boy, did come down. And when he was coming down, I thought to myself, okay, I'm sitting here in this really good seat. What I could do is stay here and make him sit over toward my left, which is not as good of a seat, or I could give him the better seat. And thank God I gave him the better seat. Because if not, I don't know what would have happened.
So
I think
better
about
seat
that all the time.
Better seat as
better seat. So
you could see better, or it just wasn't as safe.
I wasn't thinking of this. Well, where I was sitting, like I said, I could sit down and it was comfortable.
Yeah.
and there was the security of you could push with your feet.
Right.
To the left, it was not nearly as comfortable. It kind of looked like this, like the rocks were shaped like this. So you're kind of trying to sit in between, in the crevice in between these sharp points.
Okay. Gotcha.
So it was like this. And of course, and it would lead down into the ocean. So there was actually no form of security. There was nothing for you to grab onto except sharp rock. If you want to hold on to anything, you can't on the seat to the left. Not seat to the left, but on the rocks to the left.
And normally, as an adult, we'd want to sit in the comfortable spot. And
Normally we would.
Yeah.
Normally we would. And as a pastor, I can tell you that a lot of people do give me the comfortable spot, or they want me to eat lunch first or whatever. And I just always insist on going last, because I always think of what Jesus said: if you want to be first, be last. And if you are going to be last, then you're going to be first. Or if you're, you know what I'm doing?
Yes,
I'm messing it up. But yeah, if you go first, you're going to be last. Someone is going to put you in your place and humble you, or God will do it. So I thought, well, I'm going to give him the better seat. Even though I'm almost twice his age, I'm going to give him the better seat. So I actually moved to the left, to the seat that kind of, it actually looked like a slide. It looked like a slide leading off the cliff. That's where what it looked like. But
and at any point, did you think, maybe no one should sit here?
Not at all.
Oh.
I didn't think that it was that dangerous. I thought, I am about 6 feet from the edge of the cliff. The water is going to come up and splash us, and that's it. I didn't have any apprehension. It wasn't the safety or security issue that I was thinking of, not in the least. I was only thinking about this. I'm giving him the comfortable spot.
I see.
You know, that's all. I didn't think that there was any danger at all. Well, one wave came, another wave came, another wave came. None of them was big enough to create a splash. But then we saw one wave and we thought, we think this is maybe the one that's going to come and splash us big. And it did. When it hit, now, one thing you need to know is that there's a big, large rock that jets out into the ocean right at the place where, at the edge of the cliff where we were sitting. It's like this. Here's the ocean level, and there's a big rock here that goes out about 15 to 20 feet. Then, for anyone who's watching the video, they can see the picture that I'm painting with my hands. And then here, there's about a 6 to 8 foot drop off the edge of the cliff. And then the land goes up gradually on the rock. And Kyle and I were sitting about here. And Sam was up here recording. So we were sitting here. And then it would, you know, so it was about 6 to 8 feet, 6 feet here, and then 6 to 8 feet down, and then a big rock here that leads out, you know, that jets out into the sea. So the wave, so what we needed was a wave big enough that would come and splash the rock face, the cliff face, and then splash up and across and come over us. That's what we were waiting for. So finally, after a bunch of little waves that didn't do that, we found one wave that was big enough, and it splashed up and it just drenched us. Sam, we have it on video of the moment when the wave came up and Sam laughed because we were just drenched, but he was dry. It was like going to SeaWorld and having Shamu do the tail thing.
Yeah.
And then in an event that none of us could have predicted, I began to slide forward. When the wave, because what happened was there was so much water in the wave that when it came down and landed, it needed to go back into the sea. And like I said, I was sitting on a spot like this that looked like, you know, U shapes. And all of the water landed in there and just started going forward. And it just pulled me forward with it. And within just a second or a second and a half, I was gone. And to this day, I thank God that, okay, let me just explain something like I explained in the other podcast and to everyone who wants to hear this, that the volume of water in that wave was a curse because it pulled me out to the sea. But also the volume of water in that wave was a blessing because there was so much what, remember, right at the bottom of that cliff, after a 6 to 8 foot drop, there's a huge rock that's about 10 to 15 to 20 feet, not even 10, 15 to 20 feet that goes out into the ocean. I could easily have fallen off of the cliff and then dropped those 8 feet and banged my head and never, never remained conscious or died upon impact. Who knows? But actually, the wave had so much water in it that when it pulled me into the ocean, it pulled me across, it kind of slid me like hydroplaning when you're driving too fast in the rain and you drive across the puddle, like Jesus walking on the water. It slid me across the rock and I didn't feel the rock at all. As far as I had known, as far as I knew, I slid directly into the water. I didn't even realize that there was a rock there until later when I saw and I realized that there was a rock there, and I'm like, whoa, God totally spared me from that. So I stayed awake, tumbling and tossing around, conscious, tossing and turning around.
Are you a good swimmer? Are you a good swimmer?
I am not a good swimmer, but at least I know how to stay afloat.
Yeah.
I'm a horrible swimmer. The breaststroke, the doggy paddle, whatever. I don't know anything. The butterfly stroke, I don't know anything about how to swim well, or how to move my arms right. But I do know how to stay afloat. So that was a great blessing. So
now, what are the kids doing at this point? I mean, you probably don't know because you're underwater.
I don't know. At that time, I didn't know. Well, what I noticed upon learning that the video still existed of that moment, now the video is so personal, I really don't know that I want to share that.
Yeah, I was
It
wondering.
also freaks people out. It also freaks a lot of people out when they see it, because they know about the ordeal that I went through after this point. But it is a personal video. I share it with people that I'm really, really close to. But in the video, as soon as Kyle realizes that I slid into the water and that I was gone, he quickly got up, and Sam started laughing. Stopped laughing and quickly ended the video. So Sam just turned off the video as soon as he realized what had happened. Kyle got up as soon as it had happened, probably to go back up the rock, away from the, to real safety, away from the water. I put my arm, I was still tumbling and tossing and turning around in the water at the time. I put my hand up above my head so that I could feel the water coming down my arm, because I had no breath in my lungs. I was not expecting this to happen. So I didn't prepare by taking a deep breath. And so I just needed the earliest gasp of air that I could. So I figured if I put my hand up, then as soon as I come above the water, as soon as my arm, and I feel it coming down my arm, I can know when to expect to be able to take a breath. So that happened. I put my arm up and I came up above the water and I took a deep breath, got my bearings. I was quite far at that point already, quite far from the place where you would jump off and then swim to the other side and climb back up. Did you
know what happened when you came up? I remember one time I fell into some water and I didn't know that I even had fallen in until I came up. Did you know, were you aware?
Even before I came up for that breath, I knew that I was at the moment that I was being pulled into the water, even at the moment before I went in, but as I was beginning to slide forward, I didn't know I looked around, I didn't know what I could grab onto. There was nothing if I had grabbed onto that rock, my hand would have been sliced. Mm-hmm. In the middle of taking a knife and cutting your hand with it. That's what the rock would have done to me. There was nothing for me to grab onto. I knew what was happening in real time. I was completely alert and aware of everything in real time. And it was very scary. Boy, oh boy, let's see. Yep, I came up for air. got my bearings. First thing I thought is, let me try to make it back to the rocks, which was a very stupid decision, because even if I had made it back, then before I would have a chance to climb the rocks, another big wave would have come and thrown me against the rocks. And
But
that
like,
would have been
you think
awful.
I mean, that's the only option
It's
you
the,
think of at the
but
time.
it was the only option I thought of. Yeah, exactly. Looking back, it was unwise, but at the moment it looked like the only chance. You know, of course, you fell into the water on a dangerous day, get out. So I tried to get out. What I did was I closed my eyes. My eyes were burning from the salt. I closed my eyes and I just began to swim with all my might. I began to swim as hard as I could to the part where you would usually on a calm day climb out. And maybe 10 or 15 seconds, I just closed my eyes and swam as hard as I could to reach that spot. When I opened my eyes, I was actually so much farther out to sea than I was when I started that, because the waves were just pulling me out. So all of that exertion of oxygen did not help me in the least. A few years prior to that, I had gotten my scuba certification. And they tell you that if you're scuba diving and you're underwater and you begin to panic, don't freak out and don't exert energy and waste more oxygen than you need to needlessly. Don't do that. Just conserve your energy, conserve your oxygen, and control your movements and control your breathing. So I thought, okay, well, that's a principle that I can apply to this situation. And that was a few years prior that I had had the open divers certification, that I got that. But just a month before this event at the cave, I got my advanced certification. So all of this information was fresh in my mind about not wasting oxygen. So immediately I just decided, okay, I'm not going to swim to the sea and to the rocks anymore. If I do, I might die anyway. I'm just going to try to stay afloat as long as possible and wait for any help to come. That's all I can do at this point, because the ocean is much stronger than I am.
And you've had faith that the boys, did you have faith that the boys were going to call for help?
What I did was I yelled to the boys, help me. I yelled very loud, help me, once or twice. And then I thought, oh no, what if they interpret help me as jump in and help me? So I quickly revised my statement to call 911. So I did that. And then I don't remember hearing, I mean, I remember having them shout different words. I don't remember whether I could hear them or understand them or not. I don't remember what the words were, even if I couldn't hear them at the time, but we were yelling back and forth. But I don't believe that I heard what their reply was, because all I tried to do was to shout, call 911 louder and again. So I believe, if my memory serves me correctly, I don't remember what they said, but anyway, they did call, remember, there was no cell phone signal. They had to run up the trail from the parking lot into the jungle is downhill. They had to run uphill. Part of it is very slow and where you're actually kind of like rock climbing. Part of the trail is you're rock climbing on the way up. Then it becomes more walkable and trekkable up near the top. But at the beginning, it's a bunch of climbing, so it slows them down. But remember, this was their first time there. The jungle part, the part from the parking lot to the cave, is generally pretty easy. But from the cave to the ocean overlook is more difficult in terms of where you are. So the boys at one point set down their water bottle. They had a big red jug filled with water. And they set it down. They were like, this thing is slowing us down. So they set it down, ran around the jungle for 10 minutes, and then they actually came across that red water bottle again. So they realized that they had literally been running around in circles. Oh. And they had to, but finally, thank God, they made their way to the cave and then up the trail. And it was only when they were back at the cars, they were checking their phones the whole way, but it was only back in the parking lot that they got the cell phone reception. They called 911. 911 called the Coast Guard. The Coast Guard called some other people. But meanwhile, I was in the water alone and blaming God, really blaming God. And I still feel horrible for it, but I was blaming God for, why is this happening? I'm never going to have the chance to do all I've wanted with my life. It was a very dark moment for me. But there was one moment that really changed everything about the way that I was thinking and contemplating everything going on. I was asking all the typical questions. Why me? Why is it happening? Why are you allowing it? All of these things.
Did that time, I know you spent a lot of time in the water. Did it feel as long as it was? Did it feel longer? You know, you're spending time talking to God, or, you know, sharing all your frustration. Did it seem like that was just a lifetime?
It really seemed like my life flashed in front of my eyes, but very quick. It seemed as quick as it was. Sometimes when people's lives flash in front of their eyes, it seems like a long time, but it was actually in the snap of a finger. For me, it just seemed like a snap of a finger. Everything that happened seemed like the amount of time that it actually took, if that makes sense. It didn't seem any longer or shorter to me. It really seemed like it was about the time that it was.
And you were in the water for over an hour, right?
Well, we estimate, we have the timestamp of the video of the moment that I fell in, which I cannot remember the time, but 1 something in the afternoon, I think. What I don't have is the moment that I got out of the water, but the time, but I want to see if I can get that information from the people who have it. But I was in the water and asking God all these questions and just thinking about all these things. And I began then, my mind went to the fact that this was the week before Easter. This was the Monday before Easter. We have Ash Wednesday coming up, Good Friday coming up, Easter Sunday coming up. And I began to think of Jesus, because that's who we think of during that week. We think of Jesus and all that he suffered. And I thought of Jesus and all that he suffered. And I thought especially of Good Friday. You know, Easter is a very special holiday for me, but just as special is Good Friday, because Easter is a joyous day, but Good Friday was the very sad day. So I don't want to cover that up. I want to think about that and suffer with Jesus, not just celebrate with him, but I want to suffer with him too. So I think of what Jesus went through every year on Good Friday. So when I was in the water, I thought of Good Friday coming up. And I thought, you know, when Jesus was dying, he was dying surrounded by enemies who were making fun of him and mocking him and all of the ridiculing him. And I thought, if Jesus can die being surrounded by enemies, then I can die alone. It will be easier for me to die alone than it was for him to die in that situation. And I also thought, if Jesus could die with his clothes off, he was naked, they took his clothes off, and it was such a shameful, embarrassing thing. If Jesus could die naked, then I could die here with my clothes on in a far less embarrassing environment. If Jesus could die a death filled with excruciating pain on the cross, this death by drowning is not going to be pleasant, to say the least, but it is not nearly as bad as being nailed to a slab of wood. So if Jesus could die that way, then I could die this way.
Are these things that you were thinking at the time, or I
was thinking at that time in the water.
Okay, so
about
after
Good Friday.
First you were frustrated and angry, and then you started having some compassion. Okay.
I was frustrated at God. Then I thought, wow, look at what Jesus did. And he did it for me.
Mm-hmm.
And if Jesus, and this was all in the water, I was thinking that. And I was thinking, if Jesus did that for me, and these 2 words came into my mind, grace and dignity. If Jesus could do all of that for me, and if he could die with so much grace and dignity in that situation, I'll try to gather up as much grace and dignity as I can have in my situation and just stop being such a complainer. Jesus did it for me, so I should be appreciative, and I always have been. But also Jesus did it, even if he hadn't done it for me, he did it, period. So if Jesus had that mindset of being willing to die, even if it wasn't for me, the control that he had over his body and his mind in that situation, I thought, you know what? I'm going to try to control myself as much as he did. I'm going to try to be thankful. I'm going to, instead of thinking about myself and why me, and that really was the moment that instead of thinking about myself, I began to think about other people. And I began to think, and instead of complaining to God, I began to thank God because originally I was in the water thinking, I'm never going to have the chance to do this. I'm never going to have the chance to get married. I'm never going to have the chance to start up my dream church. I'm never going to have the chance to have my dream job when I get older or whatever. But after that thought about Jesus's death, I began, instead of complaining to God, I began to thank God for the chance, for all the things that I've had the chance to do with my life. Instead of, I'll never have the chance to do this. Instead, it was, thank you, God, for giving me already the chance to come to Guam, to bless these kids, I hope, to see as much of the world as I've seen, to have a loving family that ministered to me growing up and that I've been a pleasure to be a part of. And so I thanked God for everything instead of complaining about not having the chance to. So it really changed everything. I began to pray for other people. I prayed first for my family, my parents, for comfort, for God to give them comfort and peace as much as he would, to heal them as much as possible, because I know that my death would just be a blow to everybody, especially my mom, but it would be a blow to everybody. Secondly, I prayed for the church and the youth group. And I prayed, God, this is Easter week. Please, Lord, let my death not take, how do I say it? Let them not focus on my death more than they focus on your death and resurrection. I did not want, yes.
But would you say at this point, you really thought this is it? Like, I can't hold on much longer.
As soon as I was in the water, even before I came up for a breath, I realized that I was going to die. There was no question about that. It wasn't a question of whether I was going to die. It was just a question of when. I didn't even think that any help was actually coming because the waves were too high. That was one thing I didn't mention to you, but the waves, I estimated, and I'm not an exaggerator. I'm really not an exaggerator. I estimated at the time that the waves were about 15 feet high. And I was not exaggerating when I said that. Later, I found out that the waves were, in reality, 11 feet high. So that is the actual number measured by the people who took care of me, who saved my life. But yeah, no, I realized that I was going to die. And I just thought, God, please don't let my death detract from the sermon on Sunday about your death and your resurrection. I really prayed that way. That was an actual prayer. Don't let them focus more on my death than they do on yours, Jesus. And in the meantime, it was near the beginning of my experience in the water. I was swallowing so much water, my eyes were burning. Eventually, my eyes got used to it, and I was able to have my eyes open the whole time without them burning, because your eyes do get used to it after a while. But I was beginning to become less, just little by little, but I was getting less buoyant. In the beginning, it was about like this, where the water was here and my head was up like this. At the end, it was about like this.
So for people who are just listening,
yes.
So the water was like to your neck area.
Midway
And then,
down my neck.
okay.
But then if you tilt your head back and you put if you tilt your head back facing up and you put your hand just under your lower lip, above your chin, that's about where the water was, kind of near the end of this ordeal. Because I was swallowing so much water, I became less and less buoyant. I made the decision early on to pray the whole time. I did a few things that practically helped me. Let me tell you what the tips were for practically helping me. The waves were coming obviously not from the land. Of course, they were coming in from the sea. But the sight of the land was just seeing the land was giving me comfort. I didn't want to look out to sea. I wanted to look at the land because it gave me a little peace of mind. But if you looked at the land, then the waves are coming in behind you, right? So I thought, I can't, then the waves are hitting the back of your head. And then when the waves are hitting the back of your head, 11-foot waves are hitting the back of your head, then it pushes you under, it pushes your face literally into the water. And I was swallowing so much water, and I thought, I need to do something to change this. So the 5 steps I did, was, even though I wanted to look at the land, I made the choice to look at the waves directly so I could prepare for when they were coming. The second thing is, when the waves were coming, I was, how do I do it without hand signals, for the people who are listening? But the waves are coming in. I have 11 feet to go up with the wave, and then 11 feet down. But as the waves were coming up, then I had to make sure that I stayed above the wave. I had to make sure that my head stayed above the water. So the first thing I would do is face the wave. The second thing I would do is I would take a deep breath to fill my lungs with oxygen to help me stay afloat. The third thing I would do is paddle with my feet more, stronger with my feet to stay up above, especially the crest of the wave. The fourth thing I would do is almost near the crest of the wave, just as an added burst, I would push down in the water just to burst myself up a little bit over the crest. And then the fifth thing is at the crest of the wave, facing the wave the whole time, but on the top at the crest, turn my head away so just the crest hits the back of my head and doesn't come into my nose or mouth. And those 5 things put together really minimized the water that I was swallowing. It really, I went under the water and tossed and tumbled so many times, countless times in the beginning. After I found that those things helped, it hardly happened. But another thing I did, and this is a huge key, I prayed the whole time. I prayed, and I made a conscious decision to pray with my mouth, to pray aloud. I did not want to pray silently in my mind and become distracted. I was afraid that if I prayed silently, I would become distracted. So in order to avoid being distracted from prayer, I prayed aloud. I made the decision to do that. And it actually served a more practical purpose also, because what it did was it ensured that I was breathing properly. It ensured that I was taking deep breaths. It ensured that I had enough oxygen to go around my system. And that really, really helped to save my life. I think if I had not prayed aloud, I wouldn't have lasted as long. And I think I would have died quicker. And I'll tell you why later.
Well, I know our listeners are dying. Like, how did he get out of there?
Yeah.
So tell us what happened.
I tried not to give it away. Well, again, I thought no help was coming. I looked to the cliffs to see if I could see any hikers who were, like, I was looking for some Arnold Schwarzenegger type, some man who can move a mountain, who could come in and who thought, I can save you, and come in. But he would have sank like a rock, But I was at that time trying to think of any possible solution. But then I realized, of course, no hiker is gonna, there was no one I could see. But even if there was, they probably wouldn't have seen me, and they would not have jumped in. It would have been awful. So hikers, that's not gonna happen. I thought jet skis cannot happen. Boats cannot happen unless it's a big boat. But I thought a boat is not gonna, you know, even a big boat is not gonna come this close. I think I was about a quarter mile out to sea, something like that. But even a big boat, would they get that close? I don't know. I just thought one by one of every possible scenario, and then one by one I eliminated every possible scenario until I was hopeless. And then I thought of one more option that I had not thought of before. And it was the option of a helicopter. And I thought, oh man, a helicopter, that would do it. That would be, because the waves would not, and the reason I put jet ski and boat out of my mind is because the waves were too high. But I thought for a helicopter, that wouldn't impact it. And I thought, oh, and that was when I began to pray, oh God, please, Lord, please send a helicopter. Please send a helicopter. And I just waited, hoping and praying for a helicopter. And I prayed, Lord, if they're lost, if they don't know where to go, help them find me. I prayed everything. I prayed for the pilots. I prayed for everybody to, Lord, give them wisdom. Let them be able to read the sea and know the spot where I jumped off and then where I should be. Let them, you know, just by looking at the ocean and the currents and everything. And I just prayed for them in detail too. And in the meantime, I'm just despairing. I'm going between, now for me, it was not a question of whether God could do it. Of course, God has the power to do whatever he wants. The question was, will he do it for me? I've always prayed with faith for other people. When other people have cancer or when other people are going through any situation, I pray and I have the utmost faith that God, not that God can do it, of course, but also that he will do it. I don't doubt at all for anybody else that God will do it. But when I pray for myself, I wonder. I don't wonder whether he can, I wonder whether he will. I have more faith on behalf of other people than I do for myself. And yeah, so I despaired quite a lot. There was one moment that I actually felt like what's the point of postponing the inevitable? I'm just pushing it further ahead by trying to stay up. Why don't I just go under, release the oxygen out of my lungs so that I go under deep and then breathe in all of the water and end it. And I thought, you know, that would save me a lot of heartache. And it's probably not going to happen anyway, right? It's probably not going to happen that a helicopter comes. So I felt like I should do that. But then I thought to myself, well, I've always told the teenagers never to give up trust in God. What if how can I give up trust in God after preaching to them for years not to do that? And I thought, what if my body is found and they recover my body and somehow in an autopsy, I don't know if this is technically possible, but I thought, what if they do examine my body and discover through checking my lungs that the water was not kind of swallowed in or breathed in like, you know, naturally, but it was kind of forced unnaturally, and that there were signs of stress on my lungs, like I had done it myself, like it was a conscious choice of me to do it. And then it's not so much that he drowned as it was that he actually did that. It was a choice that he made to end it. And I thought, see, if that happens, and if that gets out to the teenagers, then they would realize that I was a hypocrite about trusting God and never giving up hope in God. And they would also, trusting God is important. That is such an important thing that any of us can do. We have to do that. We have to trust God. And I thought, if I do this, then they're going to realize that I was a hypocrite who didn't trust God, and they would figure, why should they trust God? So then one of the most basic things that they should do, which is trusting God, that they would throw that away. And then I thought, what else have I taught them that they would also toss out the window? About any other number of important things. So I thought, I can't do that. I have to stay afloat. I have to stay up, and I have to give it a go as long as I can for their sake, for the sake of their faith. Okay, you see what I'm saying? I didn't want it to detract from their faith.
Right.
But also I thought, what if help really is right across that ridge? What if help is just a mile away? And I thought, okay, I'm gonna stay up, because I'm a very curious person. I thought, I'm curious now if the helicopter is coming. So, and I just had to for my own mind also. And I don't know how long it was after that, maybe 10 or 15 minutes. Oh, and I don't know how personal I want to get, but I did little things here and there. Let me just go on a little bunny trail. I did little things here and there, like I didn't know, like I didn't have to go to the bathroom. But I thought, what happens to your bladder if you empty it? Does it fill up with air to make you more buoyant?
Oh, yeah.
And I thought, I don't know. Or does it just become flat? But I thought, so I forced myself to go to the bathroom, even though I didn't have to. I forced myself to go to the bathroom because I thought, I don't know if this is going to help me become more buoyant. But that's how desperate I was. Not that going to the bathroom in the ocean is really an unheard of thing. I mean, everybody does it, but I did it not for,
I'm doing it on,
but to
on
think
purpose.
that I'm doing this possibly to save my life.
Mm-hmm.
Other people go to the bathroom in the water, and then someone else says, oh, I got a warm current here. And then of course you don't say anything. But no, for me, it was actually for the purposes of saving my life. I didn't know. But yeah, getting back to it, prayed and prayed. But then about maybe 10 minutes after I didn't almost take my life. I just strongly felt like it, but I didn't. And then maybe about 10 minutes after that, I saw in the distance, coming across the land out to the sea, a helicopter. And I could tell by the look of the helicopter that it wasn't some sissy looking traffic cam helicopter or news helicopter. This was a full, fully outfitted, military looking, really tough looking. When you think of war, you think of this helicopter is on a mission. And I thought to myself, am I the mission? I felt like that, but I felt like I was too little for that to be the case. I felt like I wasn't important enough. But then I thought, why else would they be out here? And and as they somewhat approached, but they went much further out to sea than I was. So I was much closer to the land than where they were looking. And then they began to pass from the north to the south. And in the meantime, I decide, okay, I need to wave. So I pick up my arm over the water and I try to wave, but see, once you pick up something above the water line, that's when you realize how heavy it is. And my arm was exhausted from all of that movement in the water for at least 45 minutes by that point. No, I'm sorry, probably at least an hour and 10 minutes actually. Because I said 45, actually what it was we think it was 45 minutes before the boys got a cell phone signal.
Okay.
So I fell in the water. 45 minutes later, they called for help. And then it took however long for the helicopter to even come across the sea. Did you have a question?
No. So the helicopter, it's past,
yes.
it's past you, and now you're like, what?
The helicopter is passing me, and I'm trying to wave, but I'm not getting their attention. They do end up passing me to the south. And of course, I fall into despair again, thinking, I really don't know how I'm going to get out of this. God, please send them back. Please send them back, Lord, and let them see me. And it was about a good 10 minutes that went by until they actually did come back.
No,
And
wait.
as they approached, yes.
You didn't tell the part about your swimsuit.
Well, yes.
Coming?
It's coming.
Okay.
In those 10 minutes after the helicopter passed, the first time, I thought, what if they do come back a second time? And I looked at, and I didn't have anything. I didn't have my backpack. All I had on me literally was my shirt, my swim trunks, and my socks and hiking shoes. That's it. And I thought, well, what can I do to get their attention if they come back the second time? And I thought, okay, the brightest thing I have on is my bright orange swim trunks. They're bright orange, but they're a couple feet below the water because they're around my waist. But I need them to be above the water so that the helicopter can see. So I thought, well, but of course, with the waves being as high as they were and me being out of energy, I was not going to wriggle down and get the pants off to prepare for the helicopter coming up if they weren't going to come up. I wasn't going to subject myself to possible drowning just to take it off unless I knew I had to. So what I did was I waited until until I saw the helicopter again. Then I wriggled down under the water, but it took about 20 to 30 seconds because everything is so wet. It's hard to take your swim trunks off underwater that when you're not holding on to something or when you don't have your feet on the bottom of the pool. It's really hard to do that. And I lost those 20 or 30 seconds because by the time I pulled the swim trunks above the water, the helicopter was already somewhat past me, far out to my right. But what I did was I thought, okay, I'm going to try anyway. So I did pull the swim trunks above the water. But then, of course, above the water line, that's when you realize how heavy they were. And they were just waterlogged like you wouldn't believe. And I had no energy. The first time I waved, I couldn't, when they passed by the first time, I couldn't wave like an actual wave. It was more like I was just flopping my arm a little bit. The second time with the thing in my hand, I couldn't even move my arm. I was just with my swim trunks in my hand. It was just me flopping my wrist up and down a little bit. And most of the swim trunks were still under the surface of the water anyway. The helicopter did not see it. And they passed back to the north. And I thought, well, I'm not going to put these pants back on again and subject myself again to possible drowning. And I can't hold on to them because I need my hands to be open to push against the waves. So my only option really was to let them go. They weren't big enough or wide enough for me to tie around my arm or anything like that. So I let them go. And I looked down into the water when I was letting them go. And I remember very vividly bright orange falling into the bluish gray of the water, down, down, down until I couldn't see them anymore. And I thought, oh, this was the brightest thing I had and I'm letting it go because I can't hold on to it. And then I thought, well, what do I do if the helicopter comes back a third time? And then I realized, well, what they see when they look down is just blue everywhere. And it so happens that that was the color of my shirt also. My shirt was also a dark blue color. And I thought, well, this is not going to turn out well for them if they try to look for me and they see dark blue, nothing, but it matched the color of the water pretty much. So what I thought was, okay, what I really need to do is just, I don't know why I didn't just take off the shirt then and there. I think the reason why I kept the shirt on really was because it just, everything was getting cold. I was in the water so long that I was beginning to get cold. The shirt provided me a little extra, not necessarily warmth, but comfort. Just the fact that I had it on made me feel warmer, even if it wasn't actually the case. And but I left it on until the helicopter came back a third time. Then I thought, I'm going to take it off. So what I did was I took off, when I saw the helicopter come back down from the north to the south again, I took off my shirt as quickly as I could. And I thought, I need to make my body as large as it can be, because all they're seeing is my head at this point. I need to maximize the size of my body, like when a bear is going to attack you and you need to make yourself extend your arms, extend your legs, and growl and yell, make yourself as big as possible. And I thought, that's the only way I'm getting out of here. So I took off that shirt. So I was completely, and I had no underpants on either. I was completely naked, except for my shoes and socks. That was it. Completely naked. No watch, no nothing. No jewelry of any kind or accessory of any kind. Just my body and my shoes and my socks. And now remember, on the upside of every wave, I had to do those 5 things to help me stay afloat. On the downside of every wave, it was 11 feet of relative smoothness for me to do whatever I wanted. So on the downside of the waves, I thought, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just float on the backside of the wave and do like a snow angel movement. And I did the snow angel movement. And then, and the helicopter just continued to pass and pass to the south and pass until they were out of sight. And until I couldn't see them anymore. So then I stopped doing the snow angels. So it was with every wave, it was literally, I was doing those 5 movements, then snow angel, then up the wave, doing those 5 things, swimming, and then snow angel. So you can imagine me repeatedly changing the position that I was in. And I did it until they were out of sight. But then finally, when I looked back away from where the helicopter had flown to the south, I turned my head and faced the north again, which was where the waves kind of were coming from. And then after a minute, I heard this loud sound coming from overhead. And I looked up and it was the helicopter approaching me much lower than they had been and much closer than they had been. And that was when I realized that they spotted me. And I was just so elated. I mean, I can't express the feeling that I had at that moment. Yeah.
So I'm assuming they dropped the rope down, or the ladder rope, or what happened?
Well, I mean, I looked at them for a few moments and I just, I waved. I tried to wave, but I couldn't extend my arm a lot, but I tried to wave. And then I did I moved my wrist and my hand, come down. Like when you're calling someone over with your hand, I did that to them, come down here or send something, whatever. But it took a few minutes for them to do anything. It took so long that I just faced the north again because they were a little bit behind me, which was the south, but the waves were coming from the other way and I didn't want to be pushed under again. So I looked away from the helicopter for a while. And then after a few minutes, I felt a tap on my shoulder and it was Ryan, the rescue swimmer, Ryan Keene, who is now, I believe, serving the Navy. This was a Navy helicopter from HSC 25, the C Squadron 25, the Helicopter C Command 25, I believe. HSC, I believe, is Helicopter C Command 25. And I'm sorry, Helicopter C Combat 25. That's the group. They're based on Guam. They're with the Navy, and they saved my life. And man, they saved my life. I should at least know what the C stands for. Anyway, it's either command or combat. I'm so sorry.
Oh, hey, I won't know the difference. So
yeah, but maybe they're gonna listen to this and be offended. Don't be offended, you guys. You're doing great. You're doing great.
Now, okay, so did the swimmer, did they drop him in the water, or how did
he jumped out?
He jumped out,
but he jumped out from the helicopter with snorkeling gear on. So he had his goggles and he had the tube that you can breathe from, and he had that on so that he could breathe, and that he could also do whatever he needed to do underwater to tie ropes or whatever, or secure some harness. So he tapped me on the shoulder, Ryan did, and And he asked me how I was, and I said, I'm okay. I said, thank you for coming. And I put my hand on his shoulder, gently put my hand on his shoulder so that so that the waves wouldn't separate us. But then gently, and I wanted him to know that I wasn't panicked or whatever, that I wasn't going to drown us both. Some panicked people do these inexplicable things. But he gently took my hand off of his shoulder and put it in the water so that he could do his work. He just said, I don't remember if he gave me the 1 minute finger, or if he just said, I have to do some stuff. I'll get back to you, whatever it was, I don't remember. But he went underwater. He had to tie some harnesses and stuff. And then finally, when he came back up a minute or two later, but it seemed like a lot longer, but it was a minute or two. And he asked me he asked me to put my foot here, put my butt here. And they had a harness all ready to go so that I was kind of like hugging him also. And then he asked me if I was ready to go. And I said, yeah, or yes, or whatever it was. I'm ready. And I was so ready. And then he gave the helicopter a thumbs up. And I thought, why are we not moving? but it took about 5 seconds or 10 seconds. And then we zoomed out of the water. We were probably climbing 10 or 15 feet, I don't know, per second, maybe. I guess. Because it seems like very relatively quickly, we were much higher than the tops of any cliffs around. And I remember looking out and thinking, someday I'm gonna die, but not today. I'm gonna die, but not today. And and it was just incredible. It was incredible.
Very moving story. So I was thinking, because in my mind, when you were telling the story, there's a couple things I was thinking about. One is like, I'm trying to visualize, I'm thinking of these superhero movies or whatever. So when they lifted you out of the water, was it like a hanging ladder, or how did y'all get how did you get to land? Did they pull you up into the helicopter or what?
Yes, there was, we were attached by a rope, just a simple rope. And there was nothing that could have, like, it wasn't a ladder, like if you let go, you fall. We were attached with harnesses and clips and things, but there were ropes. There was a rope, at least one rope, I don't know, maybe two, but there was at least one rope that was coming out of the helicopter that we were connected to, that was connected to Ryan. And then I was connected to him and the ropes with a harness. And then as we were lifted up, as the helicopter was going up out of the water, at the same time, they were winching us up. And not manually, but I think with some machine that was rolling the rope back up and pulling us back up, so that when we got to the edge of the helicopter, they grabbed onto us and helped to pull us in.
Okay, so when y'all landed, where did they take you?
They took me to the Naval Hospital, which is a hospital that serves only the military people of Guam. We're a big military base that does a lot for the national security of the United States. A lot of people don't know how important Guam is. So we have an Air Force base and a naval base, and the Naval Hospital is closer to the naval base, and that's where they serve all of the military people of Guam, but they only serve civilians if they're in a life or death emergency situation. They took me to the Naval Hospital. Now, I gotta tell you, my life had just been rescued. I was so thankful, but I was thinking, am I gonna expect a $10,000 bill in the mail for this helicopter ride? I didn't know, this is honestly how I was thinking. I kid you not, I was actually thinking that way.
Yeah.
And then I thought, nobody's allowed to go to the Naval Hospital. They don't let that happen. So here they're taking me to the Naval Hospital. That's gonna be expensive for me. So I thought, the regular Guam hospital is probably gonna be cheaper. So I told them I want to be taken to the regular hospital. So, which actually, yeah, I should have stayed at the Naval Hospital in retrospect. But what happened was they ended up taking me to the regular hospital instead, but then I had to pay out of my own pocket for it. Later, I found out that the Naval Hospital would have been free. They would have done it for me for free. And the helicopter ride was also taxpayer funded. So I didn't have to pay for, I mean, I pay for that every April 15th.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you know, what happened was, it was interesting that when the helicopter landed at Naval Hospital, there was an ambulance there to take me to the regular hospital. But there were some naval military personnel standing outside to greet the helicopter. And if I could have a picture of anything, any experience of my life, I kind of wish that I would have a picture of their faces.
Oh, yeah.
Because when the helicopter landed and I walked out, I mean, first of all, I think that they had this shocked look on their face, like their mouths were gaping open. And I don't know to this day why they were so shocked. I don't know if it's because, and it might be a mixture of the two, the fact that I was walking out on my own 2 feet and that I was conscious and I was greeting them. And I walked from the helicopter into the ambulance to go to the other hospital. Or B, I was completely naked. So they had this look on their face of surprise and shock, not horror,
Right.
but a good surprise and shock. Like, I can't believe this. Because usually when the helicopter saves people or recovers or rescues people, sometimes they're already departed. Sometimes they're almost at that point, they're in critical condition or something like that, and end up passing away days later or whatnot. But the fact that I was totally, and I had hardly a scratch on my body. It was amazing. Just a couple small scratches. Even I'm shocked by the goodness that God demonstrated to me. And I can't say anything about I did anything to deserve that, or it was because of my actions that saved me. It was nothing that I could have done. It wasn't those 5 steps leading up to every wave. It wasn't any, they helped, but I can only credit God. Absolutely. I can only credit God, and I can only credit, the Navy people who.
So it's interesting because you still have a relationship with Sam. You said the boy
Sorry, do you mind if we pause for 1 second?
Sure.
It's a low battery. I need to plug my laptop in. We'll pause for a moment. Sorry. No problem. Okay. Sorry about that. I'm back.
No, just one, I guess one more question. So, okay. So I guess you still have a relationship with the boys that you went with, because you mentioned Sam is who you work at the church where Sam's parents go, where he goes. Is that right?
Yeah. His dad is the pastor.
Okay. So when you saw the boys again, what was it like?
Sam and Kyle, it was interesting because the helicopter told them the helicopter radioed into the ground and told them that they had, quote, recovered a body. And nobody knew what that meant. They were not allowed to say what the status of the body was, or even if it was me or some other distressed swimmer. But nobody was allowed to know by law, I believe. But they got conflicted reports. They went to the Naval Hospital. Then they heard that I was at the other hospital. So they really didn't know where to go. And finally, when they got to the hospital where I was, they told them that, yes, I was there, but only one person was allowed in at a time. So one by one, I saw different people with different reactions. One lady, Monica, who I love and know very well, Monica and I had an appointment for dinner the next night. And Monica came in, and just as soon as she saw me, she started shaking her head and put her arms out, gave me a big hug and started crying. And she said, "Next time, if you don't want to have dinner with me, you don't have to do that."
That's cute.
And then, you know, and Sam and I gotta say this, Sam and I, in the past, it was somewhat of a troubled relationship. You know, he was a teenager growing up and didn't always have the fondest feelings toward me. And he was very difficult toward me, which made me not as fond of him as I should have been. But our relationship, about 6 months before the cave, really started to grow and started to get better. And then on that day when he came into the hospital, and he saw me, I remember he approached me from behind. I was on a stretcher with the kind of like with the back up, and he might have seen the bald spot on the back of my head and known it was me. but he said, "Greg," not sure of my status, "Greg," and my arm comes across the stretcher like, "Come here." And I'm like, "I'm here, Sam, I'm here." And he comes over and he looks at me, and then he scrunches up his face like he's about to cry, and he buries his face into my stomach, and he's hugging me at the same time, and he's bawling. And it was the most heartfelt display of emotion that I've ever seen, at least toward me. I couldn't believe that someone would cry that much over me. I've never seen anyone cry like that or anything like that over me. And even in movies, you know, they can act pretty well, but nothing, I mean, the way that he was, I will never forget that. And that was one of the things that really cemented the fact that we will fix this relationship. We will do what it takes to make this better. Kyle was more reserved. Sam, I had known him for years. Kyle, I had not known nearly as long, maybe just a few months, because Kyle was Sam's friend from school, so he wasn't originally at the church. So he was more reserved. But yeah, it was a real heart-wrenching moment, especially for Sam, but even the two boys. And I'll tell you what I did even for Kyle, but I will tell you that I was in the hospital just for a matter of hours. I knew that I didn't need to be at the hospital. I wanted to go home, but I knew that if the waves didn't kill me, my mom would, if I chose not to go to the hospital. Okay. And that's really the way that I was thinking. So I'm thinking, I'm going to the hospital for you, Mom. That's what I was thinking, because otherwise I just wanted them to take me home. I really did. I just wanted to get home and get some rest. And I needed rest for a week. I had no energy almost for a week. It was like the worst flu of your life where you have no energy at all. You're totally drained. But let me tell you that night, I did invite the boys over to my house again, like they were at my house the previous night. I didn't invite them to spend the night. I just invited them to come over and just hang out with me for a couple hours. I said, I want you guys to tell me everything that you were thinking or ask me any question you want to know. I want everything to be out in the open so that, you know, about all of this, because I thought honestly, I felt very guilty having convinced Kyle to come down and sit next to me, because if I had not given him my seat, he would have ended up in the water, and I don't know what would have happened. And I tell everybody when they say, Greg, what can you learn from this? I say many things, but one of the lessons that I cannot stress enough is just be kind to others. I literally just gave him my seat. That was it. I gave him the better seat, the more comfortable seat. Little did I know that literally could have saved his life. It probably did save his life. I don't think he would have lasted as I would have lasted, because for a 15 or 16-year-old, he had pretty decent muscles at the time. I was very thin. that's another reason I floated generally easier than some other people, was because I did not have muscle density. Kyle had muscle density that would have made him less buoyant. So I think he wouldn't have lasted as long as I did. So be kind to others. You never know if your simple act of kindness is going to save people's lives. But another thing I invited the boys over for was I literally wanted them to put alcohol on my little, like if I had a cut here or there, like on my arm or such, I wanted them to be the one to put rubbing alcohol on it and antibacterial lotion, put a Band-Aid or whatever. I wanted them to be the one to do it because I wanted them, it was a very conscious thought on my part of having them over literally to bandage my wounds so that they, instead of thinking about, you know, like survivor's remorse or survivor's guilt, they call it, when they live and you die. But I didn't want them to feel responsible for like the fact that I almost died. So what I wanted to do was I wanted them to bandage up my wounds so that they could be a part of my healing in a very small way, so that they could be a part of my healing and think of themselves as helping me, you know, instead of, you know what I'm saying, right?
Yes, yes. That's amazing. I love your story. I just love everything about it. I love how you wrap it up by, I'm gonna die, but not today. That's a
Yeah.
great way because we are, and I've thought about that actually several
Mm-hmm.
times. I'm gonna
Mm-hmm.
die, but not today. We're all gonna die,
Yeah.
but God gets us through these different things for certain reasons.
Yeah.
But I want to go ahead and wrap up because I've kept
Yeah.
you for quite a while.
No, I have kept you. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
no,
I
no, no.
have
I've
kept
enjoyed
you.
this. Well, it's funny because the audience doesn't know that today is September 22nd at 8:30 p.m. my time, and it's
Uh-huh.
September 23rd at 11:30
11:30. Yes,
11:30
for me.
a.m. for him. So it's kind of funny because we're on different days, and I was like, okay, this is
Yeah.
cool. But anyway, I want to wrap up by talking about you. The church you work for is Castle Zion Church, and it's a
Yes.
Korean church, but it's in Guam.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but you work for, or you serve the Missio Global Ministries.
Missio Global Ministries.
Okay. And that is, if anybody wants to donate to you, I want to put the link in the description. So if they want to donate to the missions, if they want to
Mm-hmm.
donate specifically to you, do they just kind of put your name? I was looking on the website and I was trying to figure out.
So what you can, yeah, it's very easy. So what you can do is you can go to missioglobal.com. Let me just talk about Missio Global does, we have schools of ministry. We have, I love our school of ministry. That is a great program for anyone who wants to know more about how to minister in their own life or how to be a minister. A lot of places in South America or Africa or Asia, the people who love the Lord but who cannot go to Bible college to get an education, Missio Global provides local schools of ministry education for people all around the world. It's very good. If people want to donate to me or they want to donate generally to Missio Global, which is doing great work. I don't want to make it all about me. I want to make it about God and the ministry. You can help the gospel all around the world. You go to missioglobal.com. You can read all about what we're doing. You can sign up for our newsletter. On the upper right hand side, there's a donate button. And you press that donate button. You can donate by check or by card. And then there's another button that says donate online now. And you can select from a drop-down menu. You can select my name or any number of different things that you want it to go to. And you can select how much you want to donate or whether it's a one-time or recurring donation. And you can just determine all of those things. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. I'm glad how they make it easy for us because a lot of times people want to give and it's just too hard. So this is easy. So I will have that in the description so people can just click on the link right there. Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure to actually meet you. I already felt like I knew you. You know, social media kind of does that for for us, which is nice because I already saw you on YouTube and already studied you a little bit before we came on. So I will also put the video to you doing the cliff diving, which
Yep.
I don't know
I'll
if you
give you that link.
don't be
I
doing that
will give you
anymore.
well, we went back last week. Like I said, we went back 4 days ago, and I said, I don't know about this. And even the brave one of us in the group, Mike, who's very brave, but he decided, we're not going to do that today.
No.
So,
Well,
yeah,
that's
don't worry.
great. Well,
I'm
and I do appreciate your time, and I'm gonna log off to the podcast, but we're gonna
okay.
talk for just a minute afterwards.